He ignored her 23 frantic calls while 7 months pregnant. She felt a crippling pain and saw the first sign of blood. Her hands trembled as she clutched her stomach. A silent scream caught in her throat as the life she'd nurtured for months was suddenly at risk. He saw every single call. He read the texts. He watched the words, "Hospital now, the baby," flash on his screen. And then he powered his phone off, wrapped his arm round his lead, PR executive, and ordered another round of drinks. The last coherent thought she had before passing out was his name, but Julian was 1,000 miles away. What unfolds next will leave you speechless. Because the pregnant wife he abandoned wasn't just some socialite. She was a former investigative journalist, and her uncle was a man who'd spent 30 years as a forensic accountant for the FBI. When she uncovered the full scope of Julian's betrayal, his affair, and the massive fraud propping up his tech empire, she didn't collapse. She didn't plead. She documented. This is the story of how a betrayed wife and her brilliant uncle systematically dismantled the lives of everyone who threatened her family. And believe me, by the conclusion, you'll be on your feet applauding. Stick around for the final reveal. It's more than worth it. And if this story resonates with you, if it sparks something inside you, I would be incredibly grateful if you would tap that like button. Share your reaction in the comments and subscribe so you're always here for the next chapter. Let's dive in. 3 months later, on a crisp spring morning in Seattle, the glare from the waterfront event center was blinding, bouncing off the glass and steel of the city's newest tech landmark. Clara Thorne stood near the back of the packed press conference, an image of serene composure. Her face was placid, her eyes clear, her posture radiating a calm strength. She was wearing a stunningly simple navy dress, an outfit that spoke of quiet confidence and cost a fortune. Her auburn hair was styled perfectly. Not a single strand was out of place. To any observer, she was the picture of the supportive, proud wife. But beneath the surface, a cold, calculated fury was reaching its boiling point. The words of her husband, Julian, echoed from the stage, amplified by the speakers, hollow phrases about integrity, innovation, and family values. Clara had stopped believing in Julian's values 3 months ago, on a terrifying winter night, when she almost bled to death, while he was on a tropical getaway with his mistress, now standing at the scene of his greatest triumph, his company's IPO launch. She was about to turn it into his public execution. Clara allowed herself a fleeting, internal smile, not of joy, but of finality, of a debt about to be paid in full. Her own words, practiced in the sterile silence of a hospital room, played in her mind. They say betrayal makes you weak. But betrayal didn't break me. It reminded me who I was. And the people who almost destroyed my life are about to learn that I am my uncle's niece, and my uncle never leaves a stone unturned. Julian finished his speech to thunderous applause. Reporters started shouting questions. Clara didn't hear them. Her focus was on 2 figures basking in the stage lights, her husband, Julian Thorne, and his mistress, Isabel Vance, who was standing proudly off to the side. She pictured their faces on the news in the coming days. Julian Thorne, indicted on 19 counts of wire fraud. Isabel Vance, career ruined, facing ethics investigations. Justice served cold. But that was the endgame. To understand how Clara Thorne went from a trusting, pregnant wife to the architect of a tech titan's downfall, we have to go back. Back to a morning that felt just like any other. Back to a life that looked perfect from the outside, but was built on a foundation of lies. 3 months earlier. The Seattle morning was cloaked in a damp, gray chill, the kind of cold that seeped through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their waterfront home. Clara Thorne moved through the vast, minimalist kitchen with the deliberate slowness of her third trimester. Her entire world was focused on the fragile life inside her. Her high-risk pregnancy meant every day was a carefully managed routine. On the marble countertop, a blood pressure monitor sat next to a row of prenatal vitamins. She gently placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the faint, reassuring flutter of a kick. A tiny life dependent on her, and on a man who was becoming a stranger. She forced a calm expression, trying to ignore the anxiety that had been her constant companion for weeks. She smoothed down her simple maternity dress, took a deep breath, and poured herself a glass of water. "Just a few more weeks, little one," she whispered. "We're almost there." Footsteps, sharp and impatient, echoed on the polished concrete floors. Julian Thorne appeared in the kitchen doorway, already a whirlwind of activity. He was dressed in his uniform, a $400 black hoodie, designer jeans, and an expression of intense focus. His cologne smelled different, sharper, unfamiliar. He didn't look at her belly. He barely glanced at her face. His attention was locked on his phone, his thumb swiping furiously through emails as he paced. Clara watched him, a quiet observer in her own home, noting the details she'd been trying to rationalize for months. The way his phone was always angled away from her, the faint, almost cruel smirk he had when reading certain messages, the complete disconnect in his eyes when he finally registered she was in the room. "My specialist appointment is at 2 this afternoon," Clara said, her voice even. "Will you be able to make it this time?" Julian didn't look up. "The final pre-IPO briefing is today. I can't just walk out of a billion-dollar meeting for a routine check-in." "He said it was important for you to be there." Now he looked at her, his eyes devoid of warmth. The gentle, ambitious man she'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by this cold CEO. "Someone has to fund this entire operation, Clara, including the team of specialists you have on retainer. Or did you forget you haven't earned a paycheck in 3 years?" The jab landed precisely where he intended. Clara absorbed it, a familiar ache spreading through her chest. She had set aside her award-winning career in journalism. She had put her life on hold to support his dream, to build a stable home for the family they'd always wanted. And now he wielded her sacrifice like a cudgel. Julian grabbed his laptop bag from the counter. He didn't move to kiss her goodbye. He didn't touch her belly. He didn't even acknowledge the unborn child that was supposed to be their shared future. "Julian," she said, her voice softer now. "Please, he's going to discuss the delivery options. It's getting real." For a split second, a flicker of the old Julian seemed to cross his face. A hint of concern, maybe. Then it vanished, replaced by the now familiar mask of dismissive ambition. "I'll get the highlights from you tonight. I'm building a legacy for this family, Clara. Try to remember that." He walked out. The heavy glass door slid shut with a soft, definitive whoosh. Clara was left in the echoing silence of their perfect house. Her hands went to her belly again, a protective instinct. A question she had been pushing away for months surfaced with terrifying clarity. Was this baby a part of his legacy, or just a prop for his public image? She closed her eyes, trying to force the thought away. "Your daddy loves us," she murmured to her stomach, the words feeling brittle and false. "He's just under a lot of pressure. He's building something important for all of us." The lie felt like swallowing sand, but what else was she supposed to believe? That the man she'd built a life with saw their child as an obstacle? That his perfect family was just another asset in his portfolio? She shook her head, clinging to the hope that she was wrong. "I love you," she whispered, a promise to the child within. "I love you more than anything in this entire world." She had no idea that in less than 12 hours, that love would be put to the ultimate test. The afternoon light had faded to a bruised purple, when the first sharp pain hit her. It was sudden, intense, and terrifyingly wrong. She gasped, grabbing the edge of the kitchen counter for support. A wave of dizziness washed over her. Her doctor's words from last week's appointment rang in her ears, urgent and clear. Another cramp seized her, this one stronger, stealing her breath. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed Julian's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. A cold dread, colder than the Seattle rain outside, began to creep over her. She sent a text. "Something is wrong. Call me." Then another. "Julian, please. It's the baby." She was alone, isolated in their glass box of a house, and the one person who was supposed to be her partner was unreachable. Panic set in. She needed his assistant's number, a direct line, anything. She saw his tablet on the coffee table, where he had left it that morning. Sobbing now, she crawled towards it, every movement an agony. The screen was unlocked. As she swiped to find his contacts, a notification banner appeared at the top. A photo share from an app she didn't recognize. The album was titled Our Escape, Cabo. Her heart stopped. She tapped it. There he was. Julian, smiling on a sun-drenched beach, his arm wrapped around Isabel Vance. They were laughing, intimate. The timestamp on the newest photo was from 3 minutes ago. He wasn't in a pre-IPO briefing. He was on vacation with his mistress. The betrayal was a physical blow, more painful than the contractions. She stared at the screen, at the image of her smiling, carefree husband, while her own world was collapsing in blood and fear. All the little lies, the late nights, the unfamiliar perfume, it all crashed down on her at once. As she stared at that picture, another wave of pain ripped through her, sharper than before. She looked down and saw the blood. A lot of it. The doctor's final, stark warning echoed in her memory. "Any significant bleeding, Clara, you do not wait. You call 911 immediately." With the image of her husband's betrayal burning on the screen in front of her, she finally, with a trembling finger, dialed the 3 numbers that would save her life and end his. His voice was gentle, but firm. "You are an incredibly strong woman, Tanaka-san, but your body is working for 2 now, and this stress is not good. You must promise me you will call immediately if you feel any cramping, any pressure at all. Can you do that for me?" Yumi nodded, her hand resting on her stomach. "I will call you." "Good." The doctor smiled softly, then turned back to his notes. "We will schedule another checkup for next week. In the meantime, please try to rest." Yumi thanked him, gathered her things, and stepped out of the clinic into the humid Tokyo air. A storm was brewing. Her phone buzzed, a message from Kenji. "Deal with New York is running late. Do not wait up for me." She deleted it without a word back. That evening, Yumi moved through their apartment in Minato with a deep, careful tenderness, as if some ancient part of her knew her time of peace was running out. She gently bathed, mindful of her swollen belly. She changed into a soft cotton yukata. She sat in the nursery, brushing her hair and talking to the baby inside her. She picked up a small bed, surrounded by beautifully illustrated books. "What story shall we read tonight, little one?" Yumi considered the question with a quiet smile. The one about Momotaro, the Peach Boy. She pulled the classic storybook from the shelf. They had read it 100 times already, but Yumi never grew tired of it. A story about a boy born to bring joy, who faced down demons with courage and loyal friends, who never gave up, no matter how great the challenge. She read the story aloud slowly, savoring each word, feeling the baby's gentle kicks against her hand. When she finished, a calm had settled over the room, the rhythmic sound of the coming rain a gentle counterpoint to her own heartbeat. "Mama," she whispered to her belly, a question she was afraid to ask. Will you be safe? The question pierced the quiet of the room. She leaned forward, pressing her cheek to her own stomach. You are the strongest little fighter I know, she whispered, and strong fighters always win. A small, definite kick answered her, and she smiled as her eyes drifted closed, watching the city lights begin to blur through the rain. A few hours later, Yumi was in Kenji's study, arranging a tray with tea when she saw it. A notification on his work tablet, which he had left unlocked. A receipt from their shared credit card. The Park Hyatt Tokyo, Suite 4704, 200,000 yen, charged last Tuesday. Her hands started to shake. She expected to feel a hot rush of rage, a shock to her system. Instead, all she felt was a cold, heavy certainty. Some part of her had known. Some part of her had always seen it in the distance between them. Yumi stared at the notification for a long moment. Then, very carefully, she closed the tablet's cover. She could not face this now. Not yet. Not while a storm was bearing down on the city, and her child was nestled safely inside her. She could not handle the destruction of her marriage while preparing for the arrival of her son. Tomorrow, she told herself. I will deal with it tomorrow. But tomorrow never arrived, not in the way she imagined, because in less than 4 hours, Yumi Tanaka's entire world would shatter into 1,000,000 pieces, and nothing would ever be the same. The thing that woke Yumi at 11:23 p.m. was not the typhoon raging outside, but a sudden sharp pain that shot through her, followed by a terrifying gush of warmth, a contraction like a fist of iron, squeezing her from the inside. Her water had just broken. Her bare feet slipped on the cold marble floor as she stumbled towards the bathroom. What she saw there stopped her breath. Blood. She was only 7 months along. It was too soon. The baby. Her hands clutched her stomach, her eyes wide with terror. The building swayed slightly as a gust of wind hit, the sound a low moan from hell itself. My baby. Yumi scrambled for her phone, gathering him into her arms, feeling the desperate heave of his chest. He was trying to breathe, but something was terribly, terribly wrong. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand and dialed Kenji with trembling fingers. The call went straight to voicemail. She dialed again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. She switched to the Line app, her fingers barely able to form the words. Water broke. Bleeding. Hospital. Please come. The 2 green check marks appeared almost immediately, read at 11:31 p.m. No response. Yumi did not have time to process the cruel silence. She dialed 119, her voice surprisingly steady as she gave the dispatcher their address and described what was happening. She was told to stay calm, to lie on her left side, that help was on the way. She held her own body, rocking gently, whispering the same words over and over. Stay with me, little one. Mama's here. Help is coming. You are a strong little fighter. Stay with me. Please, stay with me. The baby moved inside her, a weak, fluttering motion. Her lips moved, forming a word she could barely stand to think. Papa. He is coming, little one. Yumi lied, hot tears streaming down her face. Papa is coming. But Papa was not coming. 47 floors up, in Suite 4704 of the Park Hyatt Tokyo, Kenji Tanaka lay tangled in 1,000-thread count sheets with a woman who was not his wife. Rina Sato was everything Yumi was not. Young, sharp, unburdened by the complexities of impending motherhood. Her body was draped across Kenji's chest, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing patterns on his skin. Kenji's personal phone buzzed on the nightstand. Then again. Then again. Rina reached for it lazily, glancing at the screen. She saw the name. She saw the word hospital. She is messaging again, Rina murmured, showing Kenji the phone. It says it is urgent. Kenji barely opened his eyes. He had heard this before. Yumi always worried. The doctor said she was high risk. She panicked about everything. She is so dramatic, he said dismissively. She gets these pains all the time. She always works herself up over nothing. She panics over every little thing, but it says she is bleeding, Rena pressed, a hint of something cool in her voice. Maybe you should call her back. Kenji reached over and silenced the phone, setting it face down on the nightstand. If it were really serious, her doctor would have called me. She knows I am busy. Rena accepted this explanation with a small shrug. She had not dwelled on the child. Children were complications, speed bumps on the road to power, consuming resources, and attention that could be directed elsewhere. She curled closer to Kenji, running her hand down his chest. You are right, she purred. She is probably just overreacting. Now, where were we? Kenji smiled and pulled her closer, and 47 floors below, a child was dying. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. It felt like 7 hours. The paramedics moved with swift efficiency, loading Yumi onto a gurney, connecting her to an IV, checking her vitals. Yumi climbed in, her hand never leaving her stomach. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and rain-streaked lights and the steady, urgent beeping of machines. Yumi kept her eyes fixed on the ceiling, kept whispering to her baby, kept telling him to hold on. Help was here. He was going to be okay. But the pain was wrong. Her bleeding was wrong. Everything was wrong. They burst through the emergency room doors at 11:42 p.m. Doctors and nurses surrounded the gurney immediately, shouting orders in Japanese that Yumi could not understand. Someone tried to ask her questions, to get her history, but she fought them. My son, please. He is my son. A nurse, older than Yumi, with kind eyes and gentle hands, finally managed to get her attention. We are going to do everything we can, the nurse said, but we need to take you to surgery now. Do you understand? Can you let us work? Yumi nodded, unable to speak. She felt a profound coldness as they wheeled her down a hallway, watching the doctors prepare her baby's things as machines beeped and hands moved with urgent purpose. She tried Kenji again. Voicemail. She left a message this time, her voice cracking with desperation. Kenji, please. It is our son. It is bad. Please come to the hospital. Please. She waited. She prayed. She bargained with a God she was not sure she believed in anymore. Please, please, I will do anything. Just let him live. Please. At 11:47 p.m., they lowered a mask onto her face. A long, flat tone replaced the rhythmic beeping, a sound Yumi would hear in her nightmares for the rest of her life. When she woke, the doctor was standing by her bed, his face gray with exhaustion and grief. He did not need to say the words. Yumi already knew. Tanaka-san, I am so very sorry. We did everything we could. Yumi's legs felt like stone beneath the blanket. She slid them over the side of the bed, her body heavy, until her feet touched the cold floor. A sound emerged from her throat that she did not recognize, a thin, animal wail that echoed through the private corridor. Her baby, her brave little fighter, gone. The hospital room was silent at 2 a.m. Yumi sat in a chair, clutching a tiny knitted blue hat the nurses had left for her. It smelled of nothing. Her phone buzzed, not a call. An email notification. The family calendar was synced to Kenji's work account. He had set it up himself years ago, forgetting, probably, that it meant Yumi saw every single thing that came through. The new item was a confirmation, a strategy offsite for 2. Location, the Hakone Ginyu, a private onsen resort. Dates, next weekend. Attendee 2, Rina Sato. Amara sat in the sterile silence of the private hospital room, the crisp white sheets a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed her world. She picked up Damien's iPad, intending to find their insurance details, when a notification lit up the screen. A secure messaging app. A name she didn't know. Chloe. A tap, and a world of betrayal flooded the screen. Photos of Damien laughing with a stunning blonde in a luxurious suite overlooking the London skyline. A message underneath one read, "Last night was pure magic. Can't wait for tomorrow. Adore you." Amara's eyes fixed on the timestamps, each one a nail in the coffin of her marriage. They matched, minute for minute, the hours she had spent here, alone, in agony, losing their son. The sound that escaped her wasn't a sob. It was a dry, hollow crackle. The sound of a woman who had just lost everything twice over. He had ignored 15 calls while their child's fragile life slipped away. 15 chances to be a father, a husband, and he had chosen not to be. In that moment, Amara's all-consuming despair began to crystallize, hardening into something cold, clear, and sharp as a shard of glass. The gaping wound of her grief was still there, but a new structure was forming around it, one forged from pure, unwavering resolve. She looked at the tiny knitted blue hat the nurse had left for her, the only tangible memory she would ever have of Leo. She folded it with reverent care and placed it in her handbag. By the time Damien sauntered home, she would be ready. Damien Thorne strolled into their Kensington townhouse just after 7 in the morning, smelling of Creed cologne and 5-star hotel linen. He had his story perfected. A sudden crisis with the Singapore Fund, an all-night marathon negotiation that had saved the company. He stopped dead in the drawing room. Amara was sitting in an armchair, the gray morning light painting her in shades of stone. She was perfectly still, her hands laced over the stomach that was now heartbreakingly flat. On the coffee table in front of her, his iPad screen glowed. "Darling," Damien began, his voice a smooth performance of practiced concern. "God, I am so sorry. The meeting was an absolute nightmare. My phone died. The negotiations ran on forever. By the time I could even breathe, I figured you would be fast asleep." Amara said nothing. She simply watched him, her eyes vacant, stripped of all the love and warmth he had taken for granted. He faltered, the silence throwing him off his script. He was used to her tears, her pleas, her manageable emotions. "Is everything all right, love?" he asked, a hint of genuine confusion in his voice. "The baby. Is he okay?" Amara finally spoke, her voice a ghost of its former self. "Leo is gone. We lost him at 3:10 this morning, Damien." His handsome face went slack, the mask of concern falling away to reveal a flicker of raw shock. "What? I started having complications yesterday evening. I called you 15 times. The iPad shows every call, every message was delivered and read. Amara, My phone was on silent. We were in the thick of it, I swear. I didn't see anything until it was too late. I thought the doctors said it was a minor issue, that you just needed rest. I thought he was fine." Amara slowly swiped a finger across the iPad screen, revealing a crystal-clear photo of him clinking champagne glasses, with the blonde, the unmistakable panorama of the city from the Shard sprawling behind them. The Shangri-La suite, £7,500 charged to our joint account. Damien's composure finally cracked. She watched panic and frantic calculation war in his eyes. Calculation 1. It was for the investors from Hong Kong. We needed a secure, neutral location to close the deal. I had to stay. It is not what you are thinking. She swiped again, bringing up the message below the picture. Last night was pure magic. Can't wait for tomorrow. Adore you. A dead, suffocating silence stretched between them, a vacuum where his lies could no longer survive. He said, his voice adopting the patronizing, gentle tone she had come to despise over the years. You are in shock. You have suffered a terrible trauma, and you are looking for someone to blame. I understand that. We can talk about this when you have calmed down." Amara stood. She was taller than him when she stood to her full height, a fact she'd forgotten after years of making herself smaller for his comfort. "His last word was Daddy," she said quietly. "The doctor told me our son's heart stopped beating while I was alone, calling for you, and you were inside another woman." Damien took a step back. He had never seen this look in her eyes before. It was glacial, analytical, and utterly devoid of fear. "Amara, listen to me. You are not thinking clearly. Grief does terrible things to people. Let me call Dr. Evans. We can get through this, together. Get out." The command was a whisper, but it cut through the air like a razor. "This is my house," Damien blustered, his confidence returning as he found a familiar footing. "I am not going anywhere. You are clearly having some kind of breakdown, and I think it is best if you get some rest. We can talk about all this tomorrow." Amara stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the ice in her eyes. "I was an investigative journalist before I gave up everything for you. I specialized in financial corruption. I know exactly how much you have to lose. I know about the shell company in the Caymans you think no one knows about. I know about the offshore accounts. I know the partners at your firm who would love to know what their golden boy has been doing with client funds. So when I tell you to get out, I am not asking. I am telling, and you have exactly 5 minutes before I start making phone calls." Damien stared at her. For the first time in their marriage, he looked genuinely afraid. He grabbed his coat and left without another word. Amara watched him go. Then she sat back down, picked up the tiny blue hat, and held it to her chest. She allowed herself one more minute of grief, one more minute to scream silently into the soft wool, to break apart completely. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and reached for her phone. She scrolled to a contact she had not called in 6 years, a contact Damien had convinced her to delete, to ignore, to forget. A single initial. V. Her thumb hovered over the call button, memories flooding back. Damien's voice, smooth and insidious. "Your father is controlling, Amara. He never approved of us. If you want this marriage to work, you need to choose." She had chosen Damien. It was the biggest mistake of her life, but it was not too late to fix that mistake. She pressed call. The phone rang once, then a voice she had almost forgotten answered immediately, as if he had been waiting by the phone for 6 years. "Amara. Father." Her voice broke on the word. "Leo is gone, and I have no one." A long pause, then, in a voice filled with quiet, controlled fury, "I am on my way." General Alistair Vance, formerly of M Ward 6, arrived at Amara's townhouse. 3 hours after her phone call, he was there. He had taken the express train from the countryside, stopping for nothing. Amara opened the door to find a man she barely recognized. 6 years had aged him. His hair was whiter, the lines on his face deeper. But his eyes were the same, clear, sharp, the eyes of a man who had spent 3 decades in military intelligence, learning how to read people and situations. He took one look at his daughter's ravaged face and pulled her into his arms. Amara collapsed against his chest, sobbing for the first time since leaving the hospital. She had held herself together through Damien's confrontation, through the arrangements with the funeral home, through the endless phone calls. But in her father's arms, she finally let herself fall apart. "I pushed you away," she choked out between sobs. "For years I believed him, when he said you were controlling, when he said I had to choose. I chose him, and now Leo is dead, and I have nothing." Alistair held her tighter. "I know what he said. I know what he did. I watched from a distance, and it killed me. But none of that matters now." He pulled back, holding her face in his hands, the way he had when she was a little girl crying over a scraped knee. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. Leave nothing out." So she told him. The affair she had suspected for months. The night she went into labor. The 15 unanswered calls. The photographs from the shard. Damien's cold denial and calculated counterattack. When she finished, Alistair was quiet for a long moment. His jaw was tight, his eyes cold and calculating. Amara recognized that look. It was the look of a man mapping out a battlefield. "What do you want to do?" he asked finally. Amara met his eyes. Something had changed in her over the past few hours. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it had transformed into something harder, something more useful. "I want to take everything from him," she said, her voice steady. "Everything he cares about. His money, his reputation, his freedom. I want him to feel what I feel right now, like he has nothing left." Alistair nodded slowly. "Then we do this properly, systematically. No rush moves, no emotional outbursts. We plan, we gather evidence, we build our case, and when we are finished, there will not be anything left of Damien Thorne but ashes." He said this the way another father might discuss helping his daughter move. Calm, practical, completely certain. Amara felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. "How?" she asked. Alistair pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket, the same type of notebook he had carried throughout his military career, filled with meticulous notes and careful plans. "First, we need allies. You mentioned you were a journalist before you gave it up for him. Any contacts from that world who might still be useful?" Amara thought for a moment. There was one name that kept rising to the surface. "Zara Khan," she said. "My best friend from university. She is a barrister now, a King's Counsel, one of the best financial crime specialists in London." Alistair raised an eyebrow. "Best friend? I do not remember you mentioning her in years." "Because I pushed her away," Amara admitted, the shame hot in her chest. "Damien said she was jealous of our marriage. He said her negativity was toxic, so I cut her off. And do you think she would help you now?" Amara remembered Zara, her fierce loyalty, the stubborn refusal to give up on anyone she loved, the way she had kept sending birthday and Christmas messages, even after Amara stopped responding. "I think she would." "Good. Call her." Alistair paused, considering. "And what about evidence? You mentioned shell companies and offshore accounts. Do you have proof?" "I have suspicions. I have receipts and emails, but the serious financial stuff model. I only found out about Anya because Liam, my husband, sometimes took calls in his study when he thought I was asleep. That night, I needed to get into his files, his emails, his entire digital life." My father, the general, smiled, a cold and dangerous expression I hadn't seen since I was a child. "Lucky for you," he said. "I spent 30 years in military command. I know people who can access things that are meant to stay private." I hesitated. "Is that even legal?" The general's smile didn't move. "We can debate the definition of legal later." 3 days later, I met Isabel Hayes in a small coffee shop in Soma. The meeting was strained at first, heavy with the weight of a 5-year silence and a friendship I'd let wither. Isabel looked incredible, the very picture of success. Her hair was styled in a sharp, professional cut, her suit was clearly bespoke, and her entire presence radiated confidence. But the moment she saw me walk in, 7 months pregnant and barely holding it together, all that corporate armor dissolved. Her eyes welled up. "Chloe," she breathed. "Oh my God, I heard you were expecting. I'm so happy for you." We hugged, and 5 years of emotional distance vanished in a heartbeat. We found a quiet corner table, talking in hushed tones over lattes that we never touched. "I need your help, Izzy," I finally said, "but not just as my friend. I need the best forensic accountant in San Francisco. Everyone says that's you." Isabel nodded slowly, her gaze serious. "I can help you with the financial side of a divorce, but looking at you now, I get the feeling you're looking for something more." I slid a slim folder across the table. Inside were the few documents I had: investment statements, incorporation papers, things my father's contacts had already started to pull together. Liam had me sign things over the years, I explained. He said they were tax shelters for our future, for the baby. I never questioned him. I trusted him. Now, I don't think they were what he claimed. Isabel opened the folder, her expression shifting from friendly concern to sharp analysis with every page she turned. "These aren't just tax shelters," she said at last, her voice low. "These are incorporation documents for venture capital funds. Chloe, if what I'm seeing here is right, your husband has been using your name as the primary on a series of high-risk investment vehicles." "What does that mean?" I asked, my heart sinking. "It means you need to find out exactly what your name is on. Because if these funds are being used for anything illegal, like insider trading, your signature makes you the principal party. Legally, it makes you responsible." The blood drained from my face. So he didn't just cheat on me. He was setting me up. "It certainly looks that way." Isabel reached across the table, her hand covering mine. "But here's how we fight back. If we can prove you were deliberately misled, that you signed these under false pretenses without understanding their true nature, we can shift the entire narrative. He becomes the architect of the fraud, not you." "How do we even start to prove that?" I asked. "We begin by creating a complete map of his financial world. Every document you ever signed, every account he ever opened. We cross-reference them with market activity, and we bring in a securities expert if we have to." I took a deep breath, nodding. "I can do that. My father is already working on getting access to Liam's corporate financials." "Your father?" Isabel looked genuinely surprised. "I thought you two were on difficult terms." My jaw tightened. "We were, but when you find out your son-in-law has been cheating on his pregnant wife, old arguments start to seem a lot less important." Isabel was quiet for a moment before taking my hand again. "I told you back at Stanford that something about Liam felt off," she said gently. "You told me I was just being overprotective." "I know," I whispered. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to be sorry," she said firmly. "You have to be strong, and I'm going to help you do it." Isabel's eyes hardened with a fierce resolve. "We'll do this together. Whatever it takes, I'm with you." For the first time since I found that second phone, I felt a glimmer of something other than betrayal and fear. I felt the strength of a rediscovered friendship, the quiet power of an unbreakable bond. "Thank you," I breathed. Isabel managed a small smile. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we've got that son of a bitch's assets frozen." The investigation phase took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of sleepless nights, of studying spreadsheets until my eyes burned, of quiet meetings with security consultants and financial analysts that my father's network provided. I changed during those 2 weeks. The tears stopped. I started eating again, sleeping in short bursts, functioning. But I wasn't the same woman I was before. Something inside me had fundamentally shifted. The heartbreak hadn't vanished, but it had calcified into something solid, something I could use as armor. I sifted through my memories of the past 4 years with a cold, ruthless clarity, listing every time Liam had slid a tablet in front of me, saying, "Just sign here, babe. It's for our nest egg." Every late-night request I had been too tired or too trusting to question. I recalled signing things for new investment accounts. I remembered being half asleep, trusting my husband without question, scribbling my signature on a screen without a second thought. He had used that trust as a weapon against me. At the same time, my father activated his own resources. His contacts, from his days at the Pentagon, were now high-level corporate security consultants, experts in digital forensics and asset tracing. Within 10 days, they had legally obtained a complete picture of Liam's financial network going back 5 years. What they found was horrifying. A web of LLCs registered in my name, offshore accounts in the Bahamas, all used to trade tech stocks. The pattern of trades showed millions of dollars being invested just days before major mergers or product launches were announced. "He's been insider trading," my father said grimly during one of our nightly calls. "The real question is, who is feeding him the information? Is he the mastermind, or just a pawn in a much bigger game?" I stared at the transaction logs, my old art history degree, surprisingly useful for spotting patterns. "Some of these trades don't track with his company," I said slowly. "Look here. He's buying shares in a direct competitor just before they get a massive government contract. He couldn't possibly have access to that information. So someone else is the source," my father concluded. "That was a problem for another day. For now, we had what we needed." 2 weeks after I first found that second phone, I was in Isabel's downtown office with a mountain of evidence. Financial fraud, documentation of the affair, and the most damning piece of all, location data her tech expert had recovered from Liam's hidden phone. The data showed Liam's movements on the night I'd had a pregnancy scare 2 months prior. I had called him over and over as my sister rushed me to the hospital. I watched the screen as Isabel showed me the log. It placed him at a boutique hotel in Pacific Heights. It showed my name flashing on his screen, call after call, and it showed him silencing each one. He'd sent a text to Anya that read, "Just work drama. I'll handle it later." "He knew," I said, my voice eerily calm. "He knew I was in the hospital, and he chose her." Isabel nodded, her expression grim. "This, combined with the financial crimes, gives us everything we need to bury him. Are you ready to file?" I looked at the files, all that betrayal and pain converted into data and documents. I thought about my unborn baby, about the life I had to protect. I thought about the confusion in my own heart every time Liam had said he was working late. "File it," I commanded. Isabel picked up her desk phone, but before she could press a single button, my own phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. "You really shouldn't have started digging." The message read, "You have no idea what you're messing with." I showed the screen to Isabel, whose brow furrowed. "That's not Liam," I said, shaking my head. "His style is manipulation, not direct threats. This is from someone else, someone who knows we've been investigating." Could someone at his company have warned him? Isabel wondered. Maybe. Or maybe there's a bigger player involved, the source of the information. Isabel put her phone back in its cradle. "Do you want to hold off? Reevaluate?" I thought about it for only a second before shaking my head. "No. We file tomorrow," I said. "Whoever sent this, whatever this is, hiding isn't going to save me. We move forward, we hit him hard, and we find out who's really pulling the strings." Isabel smiled, a fierce, proud smile. "There's the Chloe I remember," she said. "Welcome back." We filed the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, my world had shattered all over again. It began with a polite but firm knock on my apartment door. 2 people in dark, conservative suits, badges clipped to their jackets. "Ms. Thorne, I'm Agent Davies from the SEC. This is Agent Miller. We'd like to ask you a few questions about a number of venture capital funds." My stomach plummeted. I recognized the names they listed. They were from the documents Isabel and I had gone over. "What about them?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You are listed as the managing partner," Agent Davies said, his voice neutral, devoid of any emotion. "We have some concerns about a pattern of highly suspicious trading activity within those funds." "I don't know anything about that," I insisted. "My husband told me to sign the papers. He said they were for our family. That's what they all say, Ms. Thorne. Agent Miller spoke for the first time, his words laced with cynicism. May we come inside? I wanted to scream, no. I wanted to call Isabel, call my father, call anyone, but I knew what refusing federal agents would look like. Of course, I said, stepping back. Please come in. The questioning lasted for 3 hours. By the time they were done, I felt hollowed out. They had evidence, irrefutable evidence. Trading authorizations with my digital signature, timelines showing massive stock purchases made just before corporate takeovers were announced. They had built a coffin of evidence, and my name was on it. When they finally walked out the door, I sank onto my sofa, staring at the blank wall. Liam hadn't just cheated on me. He hadn't just abandoned me during a medical crisis. He had spent years meticulously constructing a legal prison for me, intending all along for me to take the fall for his crimes. My phone buzzed. A text from that same unknown number. I warned you. A second message came through immediately after. This one was a file attachment. With a shaking hand, I opened it. It was a flight manifest for a private jet scheduled to depart from Oakland that evening. Destination: a country with no extradition treaty. And there, listed as passengers, were 2 names: Liam and Anya. It was a court summons delivered by a courier to Chloe's door. Liam Sterling was suing for sole custody of their unborn child, alleging she was emotionally volatile, a threat to his company's stability, and a danger to herself. The petition included sworn statements from names she knew, people from Liam's tech startup, people she'd hosted for dinner, now officially declaring she was unhinged and grasping. Her phone buzzed. It was Zara, her lawyer. Chloe, we have a huge problem. I know, I just got served papers. Liam is trying to take the baby. It's worse than that. Zara's voice was tight with stress. Liam filed for divorce this morning. He got his story out first, and the allegations are toxic. What allegations? He's claiming your pregnancy has made you erratic and paranoid, that you threatened to sabotage his company's IPO, and that he's been the stable one trying to hold things together. He's got his whole executive team ready to lie for him. That's insane. I put my architecture career on hold for 3 years to support him and his startup. I was there for every all-nighter, every investor pitch. Liam was never home. I know, and we'll prove it. But Chloe, his version of the story is already hitting the tech blogs. Liam's mother, a major venture capitalist in his firm, has been poisoning the well across Silicon Valley. People are already taking his side, and it's not yours. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. So, he's making me the villain. Precisely. The crazy, pregnant wife who drove him into the arms of his CFO. The greedy gold digger trying to wreck his company. The criminal mind behind the securities fraud he's being investigated for. He's trying to bury you before you can expose him. How do we even start to fight back? We use the truth. The e-signatures he forged on those investment documents, the texts from his mistress, the server logs. We build our own narrative, and we leak it to a real journalist before he can plant any more stories. Zara paused. That's going to get complicated. If the SEC seriously thinks you were a willing participant in the securities fraud, you could be facing federal charges. We have to prove he tricked you into signing those digital forms, that you had no idea you were helping him hide assets from investors. How long could that take? I don't know. Weeks, maybe longer. Chloe stared at the peeling paint on her new, tiny apartment's ceiling. Not even a month ago, she was an expectant mother with a tech mogul husband and a life of promise. Now she was soon to be divorced, a person of interest in a federal investigation, and the subject of a smear campaign designed to obliterate her credibility and her future. My father, she said suddenly. Have you spoken to him? He called me an hour ago. He's already mobilizing. He told me to tell you to hold the line. What is he doing? I have no idea, he wouldn't say. But Chloe, I've known General Vance for years. That man doesn't make threats. He executes strategies. Whatever he's planning, someone is going to get hurt. I hope so, Chloe whispered. I really, really hope so. The following 2 weeks were the most isolating of Chloe's life. The divorce papers arrived, along with an injunction that prevented her from accessing their shared assets, effectively leaving her broke. She was summoned for an initial interview with SEC investigators, and every question was layered with suspicion. Everywhere she went, she felt the sting of social exile. Former friends from the tech circle would suddenly cross the street. At a cafe in Palo Alto, a CEO's wife, she knew, cornered her, her voice dripping with contempt. I read about what you're doing to Liam, she said, loud enough for the whole patio to hear. He was a visionary, a brilliant founder, and you're trying to tear him down out of spite. You should be ashamed. Chloe didn't answer. She left her half-finished tea on the table and walked out, her back straight, determined not to let them see the tears welling in her eyes. But later, inside her apartment, with the door bolted and the blinds down, she finally shattered. She crumpled onto the floor of the empty nursery, clutching an ultrasound photo, and cried until she was hollowed out. Then she just sat, staring at the wall, wondering if this was how it all ended, not in a courtroom battle, but in a quiet, lonely surrender. Her phone vibrated. A text from her father. I'm on my way. We need a new strategy. 30 minutes later, General Harrison Vance entered the apartment and saw his daughter, her eyes vacant and defeated. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't promise it would all be okay. He just took the chair across from her, his gaze as sharp and clear as ever. You're making the same mistake every routed army makes, he said. You think the war is lost just because you lost the first battle. Chloe just shook her head. He has everything, Dad. The money, the lawyers, the entire Silicon Valley narrative. The SEC is looking at me, not him. Everyone thinks I'm the villain. I've got nothing. And what do you have? Nothing? The general leaned in. You have me. You have the truth. And you have something Liam Sterling has never learned. Strategic patience. I didn't spend 30 years advising presidents on global strategy to let some glorified coder with an ego destroy my daughter. We're not going to fight his battle, Chloe. We are going to fight ours. And our war is asymmetrical. How? A thin, cold smile touched the general's lips. By dismantling his entire support structure, by making every single person who enabled him pay a price. By the time we're done, Liam Sterling won't have a single ally left in this town, and then he'll learn what it truly means to have nothing. The private tasting room at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Napa was the picture of discreet power. Reclaimed wood, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the vineyards, and a single, imposing table. General Harrison Vance sat at that table, an untouched glass of mineral water before him. Across from him were 3 individuals whose tailored suits cost more than most cars. The managing partners of the venture capital fund that was Liam Sterling's primary backer. Gentlemen, the general began, his tone disarmingly pleasant, thank you for making time for me. I know you're all preparing for the Ether AI public offering. The senior partner, a man named Julian Croft, gave a guarded nod. Your reputation is formidable, General. When someone of your stature asks for a meeting, one makes it a priority. What can we do for you? It's more about what I can do for you. The general slid a sleek encrypted tablet across the table. I've uncovered some significant financial discrepancies within Ether AI. Specifically, transactions and intellectual property transfers linked to your CEO, Liam Sterling. The 3 VCs traded uneasy looks. The general saw the flicker of concern, the rapid calculation. What kind of discrepancies? The youngest of the three, David Chen, asked. The general tapped the tablet, bringing up a series of documents. Investor funds rerouted through a network of shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. Undisclosed transfers of proprietary code to third-party entities with direct links to your biggest international competitor. All of it authorized, directly or indirectly, by Mr. Sterling. A dense, anxious silence filled the room. Now, the general continued, I'm not here to suggest you were aware of any of this. I'm certain you're as appalled as I am to discover that one of your star founders has been using your fund's good name as a shield for what appears to be corporate espionage and massive securities fraud. If this is accurate, Croft said, his voice dangerously low, why come to us? Why not go straight to the SEC? Because I believe in giving honorable men a chance to correct a problem quietly, and because the SEC, once they get involved, have a habit of being rather thorough. They won't just stop at Mr. Sterling. They'll start asking what the board of directors knew, when they knew it, and what due diligence they might have failed to perform. The threat hung in the air, potent and undeniable. Chen's face had gone ashen. The third partner, a man who had remained silent, was gripping his water glass so hard his knuckles were white. What is it you want, General? Croft asked, his tone now glacial. The general smiled. What I want is simple. I want Liam Sterling gone from Ether AI, effective immediately. I want a public statement making it clear the fund has zero tolerance for the kind of activities detailed on this tablet. And if we say no, then this tablet and all its contents gets couriered to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Wall Street Journal, and a few tech bloggers I know who live for this kind of scandal. The story that will come out won't be good for anyone, but I suspect the partners of a fund on the eve of a multi-billion-dollar IPO have the most to lose. Croft stared at him, a long, hard moment of assessment. Then he picked up the tablet and began to swipe through the files. The general waited, watching the blood drain from their faces as the reality of the evidence sank in. Finally, Croft placed the tablet down and looked at his partners. A silent, grim consensus was reached. We will need to verify this, Croft said. Of course, the general said, rising to his feet. I would insist on it, but I suggest you verify with urgency. This kind of data has a way of becoming public if it isn't acted upon. He walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and gentlemen, my daughter is pregnant with my first grandchild, while Mr. Sterling was using company funds to entertain his mistress, who is also his CFO. So when I say, I want him out of that company, please understand that I am exercising an extraordinary amount of restraint. He left. 48 hours later, Liam Sterling strode into the gleaming lobby of Ether AI, only to be met by two grim-faced members of corporate security. Mr. Sterling, the head of security, said, his voice flat, We need you to come with us. What's this about? There are some irregularities the board needs to discuss with you. Liam's confident swagger wavered as he was escorted toward the main boardroom. He saw the whispers, the employees who suddenly couldn't meet his eye, the way his entire staff became intensely focused on their screens. Inside the boardroom, all three venture capital partners were seated at the long table, their faces like granite. Liam, Croft said, his voice devoid of warmth, take a seat. What the hell is going on? You are being placed on indefinite suspension, pending a forensic audit, into a phantom acquisitions fund. Julian's face turned white. This is absurd. Whatever discrepancy you think you have found, there is a logical explanation for it. I have no doubt there is, said Mr. Sterling. But until our auditors find it, you are firewalled from the company. Your access keys, your network credentials, and all corporate resources are revoked. Security will escort you from the premises after you have collected your coat. You cannot be serious. We are deadly serious, Pierce. The company's lawyer slid a tablet across the conference table, displaying his letter of suspension, effective immediately. If you wish to challenge this, I suggest you do so through legal counsel. But I would strongly recommend avoiding a scene tech. Journalists have a way of noticing when our executives are forcibly logged out of the building. Julian glanced at the glowing screen, then at the stony-faced board members, then at the two stoic security guards. By the door for the first time, raw panic flashed in his eyes. "This is far from over," he hissed, grabbing his tablet. "You are making a powerful enemy, perhaps?" Mr. Sterling replied coolly. "But the mistake is ours. To own have a good afternoon." Mr. Vance Clara learned of Julian's suspension from a panicked call from him. "It is a coup. They are trying to force me out." She immediately disconnected and called her father. "How did you know I merely pointed a spotlight at a dark corner? They decided what to do about the rats. What is the next step?" Now we observe, Julian will be desperate. He will call his allies, his co-conspirators, anyone he thinks owes him a favor, and we will be listening. That will show us the full extent of the rot, and the federal probe against me, your attorneys, are managing that. But Clara, the cybersecurity team Sophia hired has its initial report as the credentials used to authorize those transfers were cloned. Good work, but they were cloned. So we can establish I never authorized them. We can establish the commands didn't originate from your devices. What we cannot yet prove is who was behind the keyboard, but my team is on it. Clara let out a long, slow breath. It felt like the first time her lungs had fully inflated in months. "Thank you. Papa, do not thank me just yet. This is only the beginning." The next piece of the puzzle was delivered by an unlikely messenger Sophia called Clara. 3 days after Julian's ousting, her voice tight with controlled urgency. "I have been running a deep background on Isabelle Dubois," she said, "and I have a hit." "What is it?" "She is not just Julian's affair. She is the architect of this entire nightmare." "What are you saying?" "I am saying she chose Julian with surgical precision. 2 years ago, long before they ever met, she profiled him. She knew his position. She knew about your family and the Reyes Maritime Empire. Why? Because this is not her first corporate takedown, just new names, a new city, a new target. I found echoes of her digital signature in a half-dozen incidents. Elena Isabelle Dubois is a manufactured identity. Her birth name is Ava Jenkins. She has a sealed juvenile record for hacking in Germany from 10 years ago. She wiped her past and built a new one from scratch. Clara felt the chilling logic of it all clicking into place. So Julian was never the predator. Julian was the bait, a tool she could manipulate. Isabelle has been playing a grandmaster's game of chess, and he thought he was the king. But why our family specifically? We were not tech money. Julian's salary is high, but it is not generational wealth. Your father, Sophia's tone was grave. She targeted Julian to get to you, and she targeted you to get to Mateo Reyes. And the Reyes Maritime Group, your father's company, possesses logistical data that is priceless to governments and competitors. Someone like Ava would see that as the ultimate prize. Clara sank onto the sofa. She had assumed Julian was the villain. She was so wrong. Julian was just the key. The true enemy was someone she didn't even know existed. Does my father know he is being briefed as we speak? And Clara, he is furious. I can only imagine. There is more that crypto being laundered through the accounts set up in your name. A significant portion has vanished into a tertiary encrypted wallet. A wallet that traces back to one of Ava's old aliases. She has been bleeding her own operation dry. Julian almost certainly has no clue, so her endgame was to bankrupt the project and vanish, leaving Julian and me to face the consequences. That appears to be the strategy. Clara closed her eyes. The scale of the deception was dizzying. She had lost her child, her marriage, her reputation, and her peace, all because of a ghost in the machine she had never met. "What is our next move now?" Sophia said. "We give them just enough rope to hang each other, and then we burn the gallows." The strategy was ruthlessly efficient. Ava had played Julian for years, leveraging his ego and ambition. While he thought he was the one in command, all Clara and her team had to do was show him the strings. His vanity and survival instinct would handle the rest. It began with a carefully constructed data packet, a honeypot disguised as a leak from EtherSync's internal audit. It was seeded onto a server that Julian, in his desperate search for a scapegoat, was sure to hack into. Every file in the packet told the same story. Ava was not his partner in crime. She was his puppet master, and she was about to cut his strings and walk away with the entire prize. Julian reacted with narcissistic fury. The showdown took place in Ava's stark white apartment overlooking the bay. Julian stormed in, holding a tablet displaying the evidence, his face pale with rage. "You have been bleeding the accounts." He seethed this entire time. "You have been moving crypto into your own private wallet. You were setting me up to take the fall." Ava remained perfectly still. She had war-gamed this exact scenario. War-gamed for what, Julian darling? You are letting them get to you. Whatever fabricated data you think you have, I can explain it. Explain this. He shoved the tablet at her, showing transaction logs, wireframe diagrams, a digital trail leading straight to an encrypted wallet under an alias, a wallet he never knew existed. Ava glanced at the screen, her expression unreadable, but a subtle shift occurred in her eyes. She was recalibrating her strategy, analyzing the new threat. "Where did you get this information?" she asked, her voice dangerously soft. "Does it even matter? You have been playing me from day one. Everything I did, everything I risked, was all so you could cash out and leave me to the wolves. Was any of it real? Or was I just your access key?" Ava set the tablet down and looked at him, her expression softening into one of feigned pity. "Oh, Julian, you really don't see the big picture. Do you? Everything I did was for our future. The plan was always to take the capital and start fresh somewhere with no extradition treaties together. Together." Julian laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You have been meticulously building a digital trail that points directly to my wife. You were going to let me go down so you could get away clean. I was building a case against her. Not you. There's a distinction. Your wife is the one whose credentials were used. Your wife is the one the feds are looking at when the dust settles. She takes the blame and we disappear. And the private wallet, a contingency plan in case you lost your nerve." Ava stepped toward him, her voice dropping to a seductive whisper. "But nothing has to go wrong. We can still win this. We can still have the life we talked about." Julian stared at her, his face a mask of conflict. Sophia's team, listening in, wondered if his obsession would eclipse his reason. "It didn't. I trusted you," he said, his voice hollow. "I blew up my life for you. I was willing to lose my son for you, and you were just going to leave me holding a bag of ashes. Julian, please no." He stepped back toward the door. "I am out. Whatever happens next. I am not going down for you." He left. Ava watched the door slide shut, her mask of control finally cracking to reveal the cold fury simmering underneath. Julian went directly to EtherSync's board. He told them everything about the shell corporations, about the crypto wallets, and about Ava Jenkins and her history of corporate espionage. He positioned himself as the tragic victim, a man blinded by love, manipulated by a master criminal. The board listened, they recorded his statement, and then they called their lawyers 24 hours later, Federal agents intercepted Ava Jenkins at a private airfield trying to board a flight to Dubai. She was not there, but they found her at Julian's company, where she had returned to wipe the central servers. They took her into custody in the main atrium in front of hundreds of employees. Phone cameras flashing, the whispers echoing off the glass walls. The images were viral within minutes. The brilliant and beautiful consultant in handcuffs, her face, a pale mask of shock being led to an unmarked vehicle. The headlines were brutal. The tech world was in a frenzy. Clara watched the live feeds from her quiet apartment with Sophia at her side. For the first time in months, she felt a wave of profound relief. "It is done," she murmured. "Is it not? She is in custody." Julian rolled over. "The feds will tear her apart." Sophia nodded slowly. "It certainly appears that way. They seem to accept that you were the primary target in all of this. Our forensic data backs it up. The cloned credentials, the remote server logs. So, I am free. You are free." Clara exhaled. The weight she had been carrying for so long finally began to lift from her shoulders, piece by piece. She glanced at the sonogram picture on the nightstand. "A tiny, perfect profile I got her for you, my love," she whispered. "It is finally all over." It was not all over. 2 days later, Clara's phone buzzed. Sophia's voice was tight with disbelief. "The case against Ava has been dismissed. What the evidence servers were wiped. Everything Julian gave the feds, it is gone, completely corrupted. Someone used a zero-day exploit to breach the federal evidence locker and erase everything that is impossible. How I have no idea. But Ava is walking free, and Clara, that is not the worst of it. What could possibly be worse? She knows it was us. She knows you were the one who fed Julian, the information that exposed her, and she is not the kind of person who forgives a debt." Clara sat down hard on the edge of her bed. The fragile hope she had felt shattered into ice. "She is coming for me. She is coming for all of us. Whatever power she has, whatever ghost in the machine is helping her, she is going to use it to burn us all to the ground. What is left for us to do but keep fighting? What other choice do we have?" The first real blow landed just hours later. Chloe arrived at her father's downtown gallery for their usual morning meeting over coffee, only to find paramedics wheeling him out on a stretcher. His face was ashen. His breath came in ragged gasps. His hand was clutched over his heart. "Dad," she cried, running to him. "What is going on? A massive heart attack." One of the paramedics said, "We have to get him to Northwestern Memorial immediately." "Are you family?" "I am his daughter," Chloe said, climbing into the ambulance and taking her father's hand. "Dad, just hold on, please." Arthur's eyes fluttered open. His grip on her hand was faint but insistent. "Don't you dare stop," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "No matter what happens, you see this through, Dad. Please just focus on getting better. Promise me, I promise." His eyes slid shut again. The paramedics sprang into action, and Chloe could only sit there, watching her father fight for every breath, wondering how much more she was expected to lose. Arthur made it through the surgery. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about his chances. But recovery would take weeks, if not months. He couldn't help her anymore. Chloe was on her own, except she was not completely. Her phone buzzed with a call from Jenna. Chloe steeled herself for another wave of terrible news. But instead, Jenna's voice was flat and steady. "I have to formally withdraw from your case." "What? No, Jenna. You are the only one who believed me. Isabel has leverage against me. Something from years ago that I thought was dead and buried. If I don't walk away, she'll ruin my practice, my reputation, my entire family. Jenna, please. You promised me we were going to expose her together." There was a long pause, followed by Jenna's voice cracking with unshed tears. "I am so deeply sorry, Chloe. I wish I had the strength to take her on, but I just don't. I have 2 little kids, a husband. I can't throw everything away for this fight. I understand, Chloe said, even though she did not understand at all. Thank you for everything you did do. I hope you make her pay, Chloe, whispered Jenna. I truly do. The call ended. Chloe sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, a stranger among strangers. Her father was in recovery, her lawyer and best friend was gone, and her nemesis was out there, somewhere victorious and still hunting. She had never felt so utterly and completely alone in her life. The waiting room was a sea of beige and muted blue. Chloe was in a hard plastic chair that felt engineered for discomfort. Her eyes fixed on the blank wall opposite her. Arthur was stable. That was the only good news. Everything else was a catastrophe. Isabel was free. Liam was now a cooperating witness for the prosecution, weaving a tale that cast him as her innocent pawn. The provenance documents and financial records they'd collected were now either tainted or ruled inadmissible. Every path they had tried to take was now a dead end, and Isabel wasn't done tormenting her. The texts had begun that morning, all from blocked numbers, each one a fresh new stab. Did you honestly believe you could beat me? Your father is a weak old man. Your friends have abandoned you. What do you have now? I'm going to burn down every last thing you love. And I'm going to make you watch. Chloe deleted every text as it arrived. Refusing to reply, she knew a reaction was exactly what Isabel craved, a sign of her fear and her desperation, proof that the game was already won. Chloe would not grant her that satisfaction. But in the dead of night, sitting by herself in the silent hospital, Chloe couldn't keep the doubts from circling. What was the use she had fought with? Everything she had given up so much, and it was all for nothing. Daniel was still gone. Liam was still free, and Isabel was still winning. Every time she took a step forward, she was shoved 3 steps back. Perhaps it was time to finally surrender. Perhaps it was time to just let it all go. She took out her phone and scrolled to a picture of Daniel, her brother, his bright, easy smile, the way his eyes would crinkle at the corners when he laughed, the ridiculous antique painting of a ship he'd loved so much. I let you down, she whispered, her voice catching. I tried my best, but I let you down. The grief crashed over her. Then a sudden, overwhelming tsunami. She bent over in the chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, releasing all the anguish she had bottled up for weeks. When she finally gathered herself, a nurse was standing over her, Miss Dubois. Your father is awake and asking to see you. Arthur looked diminished in the large hospital bed, smaller and more frail, but when Chloe walked into the room, his eyes were as sharp as ever. You look like hell, he said. Chloe managed a weak laugh. You should see the other guy, fair enough. He motioned with a trembling hand to the chair next to the bed. Sit down. Tell me what's been happening while I was taking a nap. Chloe sat down. She told him all of it. The charges being dropped, Jenna's withdrawal, Isabel's cruel messages, the suffocating sense of despair she felt. Arthur listened patiently, without saying a word, when she was done. A long silence filled the room. So you're just going to roll over and quit? He finally asked. I don't know what else I can possibly do. Yes, you do? Chloe looked up at him. You're my daughter, Arthur said. You are not a victim. You're not helpless. And you're damn sure not going to let that snake win. She's already won. Dad, she has ruined everything we spent our lives building. She has ruined our first strategy. That's all. He shifted slightly in the bed, grimacing with pain. Back when I started in this business, we had a term for this, getting played. Your inside source is gone. Your evidence is compromised. Your money is tied up. It feels like the end, doesn't it? It's not. It is the start of a new composition. Our first approach was by the book. We tried to use the system against her with lawyers and legal pressure that didn't work. So now we try something different. What else is there to try? Arthur smiled. and it was a cold, hard smile that reminded Chloe of the ruthless art dealer he'd been 30 years ago. Isabel has a history. He said she's done this to other galleries. Other collectors, you need to find them. Predators, like Isabel, always leave a trail of enemies, and enemies hold on to grudges. Find the people she's ruined. Find out what they know. Find the proof she thinks she buried for good. But how? I wouldn't even know where to begin. You begin by digging through old auction catalogs, insurance claims, fine art forums. Look for the pattern. Isabel has been at this game for decades. She's left footprints. You just have to learn how to see them. And if I find these other victims, what am I supposed to do? Then you do the one thing she would never anticipate. Arthur said, you give them a voice. You give them a chance for justice. You build a coalition. Chloe sank back in her chair. Thinking a coalition, Isabel has always targeted the vulnerable collectors who are isolated with no support system and no one to turn to. She ruins them one by one. Because she's certain they're too weak to fight back on their own. But if they stand together, Arthur finished, then you might finally have the power to tear her down. Chloe sat with the idea. It was a long shot. It was dangerous. There was no promise she'd find a single person or that they'd be willing to help. But it was a plan, a new direction, a reason to keep going. I'll try, she said softly. No? Arthur shook his head. You will succeed because quitting is not in our blood. Not for you. Not for Daniel. Chloe gave a slow nod, then leaned over to kiss her father's forehead. You get some rest, she said. I have research to do. Chloe spent the next 72 hours glued to her laptop. She scoured digital archives of auction houses and art publications. She looked for patterns and gallery bankruptcies, insurance fraud claims, and private sales that ended in financial ruin. She was looking for victims whose stories mirrored what Isabel had done to her family, and little by little, she started to find them. A gallery in Boston that lost everything in 2016. The owner had been accused of selling forgeries provided by his own authenticator. He died of an overdose a year later. A collector in Miami in 2019, the husband vanished with their entire collection, leaving his wife to face charges for insurance fraud. She had never been involved in a foundation in Santa Fe in 2021. The same playbook, the same fallout, the same complete devastation, and buried deep within the fine print of legal filings and old art forum posts. Chloe found mentions of the same woman, different aliases, different backstories, but always the same devastating methods. Juliette Dubois, Sophia Moretti, Genevieve, Laurent, Isabelle, Rossi, 4 identities, 4 ruined legacies. One monster. Chloe organized all her findings into a single, encrypted file: names, dates, locations, and scraps of evidence. Then she began the hunt. One name kept surfacing across multiple cases, not as a victim, but as an expert witness, a consultant, an art historian, who had tried to sound the alarm. A Mrs. Chen. Chloe tracked her down to a small, quiet house in Evanston, just outside of Chicago. She dialed the number, and it rang 3 times before a woman picked up. Who is this? Mrs. Chen's voice was cautious and sharp. My name is Chloe Dubois. I believe we might know the same person, a woman who currently calls herself Isabel Rossi. Although I believe you knew her under a different alias. There was a heavy silence on the line. Then, a quiet, bitter voice. Juliette Dubois. That was the name she used when she destroyed my family's legacy. I know, Chloe said, her knuckles white. As she gripped the phone, she is trying to do the same thing to my family now. And I was hoping you could help me. Another long pause. I saved everything, Mrs. Chen said. At last, every document, every piece of correspondence, every fraudulent report. I always knew that this day would come. I knew someone else would come looking for answers. I'm coming to you, Chloe said. Tell me where to go. Mrs. Chen gave her the address, and for the first time, in what felt like an eternity, Chloe felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten. She felt hope. Mrs. Chen lived in a modest bungalow on a tree-lined street in a town that felt a world away from the city. The house needed a new coat of paint. The garden was a little wild. The windows were covered by thick drapes that shut out the afternoon sun. Chloe knocked and waited. A few moments later, the door creaked open. Mrs. Chen was in her late 50s but looked much older. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face was etched with worry, and her eyes seemed to carry the burden of a long, painful history. "You're Chloe," she said. It was a statement, not a question. "I am." "Come inside." The interior of the house was packed from floor to ceiling. Every available surface was covered in document boxes, filing cabinets, and tall stacks of paper. It felt less like a home and more like the private archive of a lifelong obsession. "I have been waiting for a very long time," Mrs. Chen said, guiding Chloe into a small sitting area, waiting for someone else to find her, someone who could finally use what I've collected. "What is all this?" Mrs. Chen gestured to the boxes that filled the room. Everything, every single paper Juliet ever handled. Every forged email she sent, every fake appraisal she signed. I spent 3 years tracking her after she tore my family apart. I compiled it all. I organized it. I made it ready. Ready for what? "Here we are," Isabel murmured, sliding a sleek architectural portfolio across the mahogany table to Liam. "For a man who knows how to get things done." Liam cracked open the portfolio. It wasn't filled with blueprints, but with grainy photos, secret recordings, and forged permits, a testament to a ruthless real estate scheme that had ruined dozens of small businesses. "Why didn't you ever go to the city council with this?" he asked. "I tried." Isabel's tone was sharp with resentment. "They either wouldn't listen or were already in his pocket. Marco has a network. People in zoning and inspection you wouldn't believe. Every time I thought I had him cornered, he'd make the proof vanish. He made me sound unhinged, convinced everyone I was just a bitter competitor." "So, you walked away?" "I survived." Isabel's gaze was like steel. "There's a world of difference. I was out of options, with nothing left to leverage. But I held on to everything, just in case someone with more influence, more power, more of a reason to bring him down came along." Liam thought of his own bistro, of the eviction notice, of Marco's smug smile. "I've got a reason," he said, his voice low. "Then take it," Isabel urged, pushing the portfolio firmly into his hands. "All of it, use it, and make that man answer for what he's done." Liam spent the next 48 hours immersed in Isabel's collection of deceit. The scale of Marco's corruption was breathtaking. He had bulldozed at least 4 local landmarks that Liam could confirm, and likely many more. He'd laundered hundreds of thousands through shell corporations disguised as community projects. He had left a wake of shuttered storefronts and broken entrepreneurs, stretching back nearly a decade, and he had gotten away with every last bit of it. But this was a new chapter. This time, Liam had something Marco had never anticipated. He had an uncle on the city's Historical Preservation Committee. He had a journalist friend, hungry for a career-making story. And he had a growing list of other business owners who had been waiting for this exact chance. Liam started making the calls. His first was to Anya, the journalist. "I know you said you had to back off the story," Liam started. "I did. I had to." Anya's voice was strained. "Liam, you have no idea the kind of pressure his lawyers can apply." "I get it," Liam said, his voice steady. "And I'm not asking you to publish anything yet. I'm just asking for your help, off the record. No bylines, no traceable sources." A pause. "What are you cooking up?" "I'm planning to dismantle Marco Gallo's empire the same way he dismantled my neighborhood," by shining a light on the truth, by putting together a story so undeniable that no amount of legal threats can bury it. Silence crackled over the line. I found another one of his victims, Liam pressed on. She has everything. Years of records, evidence tying Marco to demolition scams across 3 different city districts. Real contracts, real bank transfers, a real paper trail. How are you sure this evidence isn't compromised? Because it's not on a server, somewhere, Liam explained. She kept hard copies, original documents, signed affidavits, photographs, things you can't just wipe with a keystroke. Another stretch of silence. Then, what do you need me to do? I need your expertise to sort through it, discreetly. I need you to tell me which pieces will hit the hardest, which city departments would be forced to investigate, which council members couldn't ignore it. You're trying to build a public outcry. I'm trying to build a firestorm. Liam's voice was grim. Marco quashed that internal investigation at the Department of Buildings once. He won't be able to do it again if we leak the story to every major news outlet at the same time. Anya let out a long, slow breath. This is certifiably nuts. You know that, right? A beat of silence, then a dry chuckle. Okay, send over what you've got. I'll take a look. But Liam, if this backfires, if Marco gets a whiff of what you're doing before you're ready to go public, it won't just be messy. It will be a disaster. I know, Liam said with a humorless smile. That's why we're not going to let it backfire. The following 2 weeks were a frenzy of clandestine meetings and late-night strategy sessions. Liam worked around the clock, cross-referencing documents and making discreet calls to other business owners Marco had wronged. His uncle, recovering from a recent heart procedure, acted as his consigliere from his study, using his decades of City Hall experience to guide their path. Anya worked in the shadows, building a narrative and identifying the most damning pieces of evidence. She put Liam in touch with investigative reporters from the city's 2 largest newspapers. Isabel became their historian, providing context for the documents, recalling hushed conversations, and painting a vivid picture of Marco's methods. Slowly, meticulously, the case against Marco Gallo was assembled. When the time was right, Liam called a meeting in the back room of his half-packed bistro. His uncle, looking frail but resolute, occupied the most comfortable chair. Anya stood near the door, a bundle of nervous energy. Isabel had driven in from the suburbs, her presence a quiet anchor of resolve. 4 people against a real estate titan. It's not much, Liam thought, but it has to be. We're set, Liam announced. Tomorrow morning, the story drops simultaneously on 2 competing news sites. Each outlet has an exclusive angle. Each is supported by physical evidence they have already verified. Marco can't kill both stories at once. What about his construction partner, Ben? Anya asked. Ben is already talking to the district attorney's office. He's giving them everything on Marco to get a deal for himself. His testimony, combined with our documents, creates a pincer movement Marco can't escape. And his contacts at the Department of Buildings? Liam's uncle gave a faint, cold smile. I had a chat with some old colleagues on the oversight committee. The inspectors who signed off on Marco's permits are already under internal review. By the time Marco finds out, his inside help will be running for cover. Liam looked around the small room at the faces of his unlikely coalition. His uncle, his friend, a woman who was a stranger just weeks ago. A year ago, he was just a chef, dreaming of a Michelin star. 6 months ago, he'd lost the restaurant he'd poured his soul into. But in the wreckage, he'd found something else, a resolve he never knew he possessed, allies he never saw coming, and a cause that gave purpose to his loss. Tomorrow, Liam said, we take back the narrative, the way he took our livelihoods from us. Are we good to go? The determined nods around the room were his answer. They were good to go. Liam picked the restaurant with purpose. It was new, trendy, and packed with the city's elite, the exact kind of place Marco used as his personal stage. Marco arrived 10 minutes late, a king holding court, his tailored suit radiating an aura of untouchable success. He slid into the chair opposite Liam with the easy confidence of a shark. "I was surprised you requested this meeting," Marco said, his smile all teeth. "I figured you'd be too busy packing boxes. The neighborhood, I hear, is getting quite an upgrade." Liam didn't rise to the bait. "It's a work in progress. Thanks for asking." "A shame," Marco said, barely looking at the menu. "So, you said you wanted to discuss an arrangement. I assume that means you're ready to accept my generous buyout offer." "Actually," Liam said, "I'm here to give you a warning." Marco laughed out loud. "A warning? You have nothing. Your little community board petitions, or your business is gone. Your friends have scattered. What possible warning could you offer me?" Liam reached into his jacket and pulled out a single photograph. He slid it across the table. "Isabel Moreau," Liam said softly. "The River North Project, 2017. The chemical spill you covered up." Marco's smile tightened. "Sarah Jenkins, Lincoln Park, 2020. The faulty wiring that led to the fire." The smile was gone. "The Miller family, West Loop, 2022. The foundation cracks you bribed an inspector to ignore." Liam leaned forward, his voice ablade. "I have it all. Every shortcut, every payoff, every family you ruined." For the first time, Marco's composure fractured. Liam saw a flicker of genuine alarm in his eyes. "I found Isabel," Liam went on. "Remember her? The partner you cheated and threatened into silence. The one you thought was too scared to ever speak up." "Whatever she gave you," Marco said, his voice dangerously low, "it's worthless. Old news, hearsay, nothing that will ever stick." "Actually, you're mistaken," Liam countered. "Isabel kept physical copies, invoices, signed work orders, internal memos, things that can't be remotely wiped. Things that lead right back to your office, bypassing every shell corporation you've ever created. That proves nothing. It proves everything. The city's top investigative reporters have copies, not the ones you have on retainer. Different reporters. Reporters who have been building a case against you for weeks without you even knowing." Marco's face had gone ashen. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Liam pulled out his phone and laid it on the table, showing Marco a preview of a web page set to go live. The headline was explosive, a story detailing zoning fraud in one district, another outlining bribery in another. "Right now," Liam said, "journalists from 2 different papers are preparing to publish. The story is about zoning fraud, bribery, conspiracy, and in a few hours, the DA will be adding a few more charges to that list. Your friends on the city council can't help you. Your money can't help you. Your wall of lawyers can't help you." Marco stared at the phone, his breathing shallow. "Oh, and there's one other thing," Liam leaned in. "Your partner Ben? He's already made a deal. He's at the DA's office as we speak, detailing every illegal transaction. He's saving himself by serving you up on a platter. He wouldn't dare. He already has. You taught him how it's done, after all. Self-interest above all else." Marco's facade of control completely disintegrated, his face a mask of fury and panic. "You think this is over?" he snarled. "I have connections. I have a war chest. I will ruin you." Liam stood, dropping a few bills on the table for his untouched water. "You came from my neighborhood," he said, his voice even. "You tried to kill my dream because you thought I was an obstacle. You destroyed my business, my credit, my peace of mind." He leaned down, his face just inches from Marco's. "But you forgot something. I wasn't just another chef. I'm the son of a union organizer, and we never, ever back down from a fight." He straightened up and grabbed his jacket. "So here's your warning, Marco. You can wait for the press to descend on you, or you can try to run. But we both know they'll find you. The story is too good to let go." Liam walked out of the restaurant and didn't look back. By the next morning, Marco Gallo was the lead story on every news site in the city. The footage was inescapable. The titan of real estate, disheveled and frantic, being swarmed by reporters outside his office. The photo that ran in the paper showed a face stripped of all its arrogant power. Clara watched the stock market coverage from her father's Sausalito apartment, surrounded by the people who had helped her fight. Arthur sat in his reading chair, composed as ever, but with a quiet strength that filled the room. Her sister Maya stood by the window, finally able to stop monitoring encrypted servers. Ben, her father's oldest friend, sat on the sofa, a look of grim satisfaction on his face, as he watched the tech empire that had destroyed her life finally implode. "It is done," Ben whispered. "It is really done." "Not quite," Arthur said. "There is still Eleanor." Eleanor Vance was publicly censured 2 weeks later. The SEC hearing was broadcast live. Reporters, former employees, and curious onlookers filled the room. Clara sat in the front row, her face unreadable, as the commissioner detailed the charges: 20 years for securities fraud, insider trading, and corporate negligence. Julian was led away in handcuffs, a defeated man in a standard-issue jumpsuit. His designer sneakers and charismatic smirk were nothing but a memory. But before they took him from the room, Clara made sure to catch his eye. She did not smile. She did not show any triumph. She simply met his gaze and held it until he looked away. He would spend the next 2 decades remembering what he had traded, remembering the day of the earthquake, when the woman carrying his child was trapped and calling for him while he was at a Napa resort with his mistress. That was her victory. That was justice. Arthur waited until Julian's sentencing was final before making his own moves. His first visit was to Eleanor Vance. Julian's mentor answered the door of her Pacific Heights penthouse, looking far more fragile than Arthur remembered. The professional destruction had begun immediately after Clara filed her lawsuit. Eleanor had been asked to step down from every board, was removed from every venture capital fund, and shunned by the people she had spent a lifetime cultivating. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice like ice, "I do not believe we have anything to discuss. On the contrary, we do." Arthur stepped inside without an invitation. "You knew about Julian's fraudulent data. You covered for him. When your own analysts came to you with concerns, you told them they were mistaken. A mentor's job is to guide. An investor's job is to perform due diligence. And you failed." Arthur placed a tablet on her marble coffee table. "This is a draft of an article scheduled for tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. It details how the great Eleanor Vance enabled a serial fraudster. You covered up his crimes and conspired to silence the people who tried to expose him." "You cannot," Eleanor whispered. "I already have. I have also endowed a new fellowship for ethics and technology at Stanford. In exchange, they are publishing a special case study about investors who enable corporate abuse. Your name is featured prominently." Eleanor stared at him, her face ashen. "You taught Julian that perception matters more than integrity," Arthur said. "Now you will learn what happens when the truth becomes the only perception left." He left without another word. Eleanor Vance sold her penthouse within the month and moved to a place where no one knew her name. The second visit was to Julian himself. Arthur used his old legal connections to arrange a meeting at the federal detention facility. He sat across from his former son-in-law in a stark interview room, observing the hollowed-out man who had once radiated so much confidence. "If you are here to gloat," Julian said, his voice weak, "I am here to make sure you understand something." Arthur leaned forward, his voice quiet and precise. "Clara's last conscious thought before she passed out under the rubble was your name. She called for you while her lungs were filling with dust, while she was trapped, while the first responders were trying to reach her and begged her to hold on." "I did not know the earthquake was that bad," Julian whispered. "You did not care. That is worse. You saw Clara calling. You read her dozens of texts. You knew something was terribly wrong, and you turned your phone off so you could finish your weekend with your mistress." Julian's eyes filled with tears, the first genuine emotion Arthur had ever witnessed from him. "Your company is gone," Arthur continued. "Your money is gone. Your mentor's reputation is destroyed. Your freedom is gone for the next 2 decades." He stood, adjusting his coat. "But here's what you will carry for the rest of your life. Every night, when you close your eyes, you will see the rubble. You will hear her calling for you, and you will know that you could have been there, but you chose her." Arthur walked to the door. Julian was sobbing now, ugly, broken sobs that echoed off the concrete walls. "Live with that," Arthur said without turning back. "Forever." The door clicked shut behind him. The final visit was to Isabel. She had been transferred to a federal prison after her own sentencing. 27 years, across multiple jurisdictions, no chance of parole. She would die behind bars. Maya sat across from her in the visitor's room, watching as she tried to maintain a shred of her old arrogance. She was wearing orange now, her chic haircut grown out, her polished nails gone. The mask had been completely shattered. "You think you have won?" she said. "Yes, I have skills. I have servers. You have nothing." Maya slid a tablet across the table between them. "Every source you ever had has been informed of your history of corporate espionage. Every person who owed you a favor has been shown proof of your previous crimes. Every digital escape route you might have imagined has been permanently sealed." "There has to be something," Isabel whispered. "There is not." Maya stood. "You targeted my family because you thought my father was just a retired old lawyer with books. You thought my sister was a soft target you could ruin for a story." She leaned down, her voice barely above a whisper. "You miscalculated. I am a woman who spent the last 6 months learning your entire digital life, and my patience is meticulous." She walked to the door. "Enjoy your next 27 years. Miss Dubois, I will make sure every single one of them is exactly as disconnected as you deserve." She left her alone, finally understanding that there was no escape, no hope, no future, only the consequence of everything she had done. 1 month later, Clara sat in a doctor's office, staring at the woman in the white coat who had just turned her world upside down again. "Congratulations," the doctor said warmly. "You are pregnant. About 12 weeks along." Clara's hand went to her stomach. Shock ripped through her, followed by confusion, then a dawning realization that made her gasp. 12 weeks. That is before everything happened, before the earthquake. "Yes." The doctor nodded gently. "You conceived this baby before any of it started." Clara sat in stunned silence. A baby. A new life growing inside her, while her entire world had been falling apart. A piece of the future she had not known was possible. She did the mental math. The timing was right. The last time she and Julian had been together, before everything unraveled, before the day of the quake, before she discovered the truth, this baby was a connection to the life she thought she had lost forever. "Is everything okay?" the doctor asked. "You look overwhelmed." "I am." Clara laughed through sudden tears. "I just was not expecting this. I understand your circumstances have been challenging. If you need to discuss your options—" "No," Clara shook her head firmly. "I want this baby. More than anything. The doctor smiled. Then we will make sure you get the best possible care. Clara drove to her father's house in a daze. Arthur was in his garden, pruning a Japanese maple, moving with a calm deliberation. His recovery was progressing well. He took one look at her face and set down his shears. What happened? He asked. Clara told him. When she finished, Arthur was silent for a long moment. Then his face softened in a way she had not seen since she was a little girl. A grandchild, he said quietly. Another one. Yes. He pulled her into his arms, holding her the way he had when she was small and scared, and believed her father could fix anything. This is a gift, Clara, he said. After everything you have been through, everything you have lost, this is a gift, I know. She pressed her face against his shoulder. I am going to name her Aurora. Aurora, because that is what she is. The dawn after the longest night of my life. Hope for the future. 3 months later, Clara stood at the dedication of the Phoenix Overlook. It was a beautiful public space in the Marine Headlands. Funded by the foundation she created with the settlement money recovered from Julian and Isabel's accounts. Redwood benches lined the path, overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge and the city skyline. In the center stood a simple stone, inscribed with a dedication to the city's first responders. Clara touched her growing belly as she read the inscription, "For those who run toward the danger, the bravest people I have ever known." Arthur stood beside her, leaning on his cane but looking strong. Maya was there too, freed from the digital war she had waged. Ben had come from his semi-retirement to see the beautiful space that had grown from her resilience. 4 people, bound together by tragedy and triumph. You are going to have a beautiful view of the world, little one, Clara said softly to her belly. I am naming you Aurora because you are the light that came after the darkness. He would be proud of you, Arthur said. His voice was rough with emotion. You did not give up. I could not. I made a promise to myself. Maya put an arm around her shoulders. And now you get to start over. Clara nodded slowly. Yes, but it is different this time. Different how? Before, I was starting over for someone else, for Julian, for the marriage I thought I wanted, for the life I thought I was supposed to have. She looked around at the overlook, at her father, at her sister, at the friend who had become her staunchest ally. This time I am starting over for me, and for the child who made me a survivor, the one I almost lost, and the one who is coming. The dedication ceremony had ended hours ago, but Clara stayed. She sat on a bench overlooking the bay, watching the fog paint the sky in shades of silver and gray. Her father had gone home to rest. Maya had returned to her life. Ben had begun the drive back to his quiet home, more content than Clara had ever seen him. She was alone with her thoughts, and for the first time in months, they were peaceful. She thought about the past year, about the collapse, about Julian, about Isabel, about all that was gone and all that was growing. People say that with enough time, any wound can mend, she thought, but that's a lie. Time only blurs the edges. Mending is the work you choose to do each morning. Her hand rested on the curve of her stomach, a small, safe harbor of hope. I lost my son, she whispered to the sprawling Chicago skyline, to the setting sun, to Leo's memory. I lost a decade of my life. I lost myself in a marriage that was a gilded cage. But in the wreckage, I found her again. The woman I was always supposed to be. She moved toward the edge of the rooftop garden, stopping beside a small, elegant plaque dedicated to Leo. My father, the judge, always said, justice isn't about rage. It's about restoring equilibrium. It's making sure those who break the world can't do it again. She traced the engraved letters. Julian will have 20 years to contemplate his choices from a federal prison cell. Chloe will spend the rest of her career trying to claw her way back from being disbarred. And I I get to begin again. She gazed at the sky, where the first city lights began to rival the stars. But this time, I'm not building my life around someone else. I'm building it for me, and for the two children who gave me the title of mother, the one I carry in my heart and the one I carry now. She started toward the elevator, toward her car, toward whatever came next. Then she paused, looking back one last time. I love you, Leo, she breathed. Forever. A hawk, catching an updraft, circled high above the building, its wings gilded by the final rays of sunset. It soared for a moment, a symbol of freedom, before gliding away over the city. Anya watched it disappear. Then, with a faint smile, she placed a hand on her belly and walked forward into the life that was waiting. 4 months later, on a crisp autumn morning in October, Thea Rose Vance was born. She had her mother's determined gaze and her brother's joyful spirit. She was fierce, she was healthy, she was everything. Anya held her daughter close in the quiet hospital suite, surrounded by the few people she trusted. Her brother Mikhail sat in the armchair by the window, his usual cynicism washed away by silent, happy tears. Simone, her best friend, was already sketching designs for the nursery on a tablet. "Welcome to the world, little hawk," Anya whispered. "Your big brother is watching over you from the stars." The baby stirred and nestled into her mother's embrace, and Anya Vance, who had seen her gilded world shatter, finally understood what it meant to be truly wealthy. 1 year later, Anya stood at the entrance of the Leo Vance Foundation, watching women and their children walk through the doors. She had turned her pain into a shield for others. The foundation offered pro bono legal aid and recovery funds for families devastated by corporate crime. Over 300 families had found a lifeline there in the last year. Advocacy, financial counsel, legal representation, community. From a terrible betrayal, something powerful had grown. Anya balanced Thea on her hip, pointing out the city landmarks, visible from the foundation's windows. "See that tall building over there?" Anya said. "That's where we prove that your big brother was a hero. He was the kindest soul I ever knew." Thea made a happy noise and pointed a chubby finger at a passing elevated train. Anya laughed, kissing the top of her daughter's head. She thought of Julian, his tech empire auctioned off piece by piece, his genius now confined to a prison library. She thought of Chloe, working as a paralegal in a suburban strip mall, a ghost of the shark she once was. She thought of her father, retired now, who spent his days spoiling his granddaughter and serving on the foundation's board. She thought of Leo, of his laugh, of the way he'd ask her if the medicine would make him strong. "You made everyone else stronger, my love," she whispered. "Not in the way I prayed for, but in a way that matters more. You are the heart of this place now, a place that protects other families, a legacy of justice." A young woman approached Anya, her expression a familiar mix of fear and exhaustion, the same look Anya remembered seeing in her own mirror. "Excuse me," the woman asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you Anya Vance? I was told you could help. My husband's company collapsed, and they took everything. We have nothing left." Anya gave her a warm, knowing smile. "Come on in," she said. "Let me tell you a story. It's about a very brave boy who taught me that integrity is more powerful than greed." And as she guided the woman into the foundation's offices, Anya finally knew the truth. Grief never truly leaves you, but it can be reforged into strength. The pain doesn't vanish, but it can be given a purpose. And true love never, ever dies. It just finds a new way to change the world.